Namu Myoho Renge Kyo. Namu Myoho Renge Kyo. Namu Myoho Renge Kyo. All right. Had a little fun with the wow video. Now we're going to continue with the Lankavatara. The basis for wow. All right. So, Mahamadi, Shakyamuni is really challenging him now. Really consider what it is to shift your mind's perception of reality to a reality that is much more congruous with the amazing process of life, of which you have the opportunity to witness and perceive. It's not the same as the material world that holds you in the bondage of identification. Subdue that. We're not getting rid of it, but subdue that and see a much broader, much more penetrating understanding, participation of this entire process that is life. Mahamadi responds, if all the philosophers teach materialism by means of various words, phrases, examples, and conclusions, which are not the truth as it is, right? This is what we've been discussing, but are their own selfish assertions tenaciously maintained because they're identifying. The philosopher that's teaching philosophy is identifying with what they're teaching. It's ego. Does not the emancipated one too teach materialism by means of various words and phrases to the assemblages of the gods, demons, and human beings who come from various countries? I say, materialism, which is not the truth of self-realization, but is something like the discourse of all the philosophers. Aren't you just a different version of a philosopher? Wow. The tolerance of Shakyamuni, yeah? Damn it, Mahamadi, you still don't get it. I've just discoursed with you on the two methods of teaching. There is the discourse, yes. Shakyamuni described the discourse. The discourse is for the ignorant. You don't get it yet. So I'm using what you're familiar with, the words, the stories, the expedient means, but not for the purpose of getting you involved in the freaking stories. I'm trying to get you to have insight beyond those things. When you do, then I will be teaching, Buddha-ness will be teaching each of us from a standpoint of maximal experience, moment to moment, being in the actual process, not bound by identification, material identification, yes? So it's getting a little dicey here in a way, because Shakyamuni is now speaking both as Shakyamuni the teacher, but he's also being or speaking for our Buddha-ness, not the man. Our Buddha-ness becomes our teacher. This is why it's our self-enlightenment. Buddha is in your mind, my mind. That is our teacher. that is our experiencer of truth, the real situation, the manifestations of energy that we are all experiencing in all its potential. Yes? So there's this slide here in the dialogue, and Mahamati's having a hard time letting go of the material world, which is, again, not annihilated, but simply unattached, unidentified as a self-ego, and is an experiencer, you might say with words, a different self, an enlightened self that isn't identified but an experiencer self, a witnesser, a participating witness. I don't know. I can't come up with a better word. I guess we'll call it Buddha. All right. So, how does Shakyamuni respond? I want to backslap him, but I am not Shakyamuni, right? I do not teach materialism. Once again, Mahamati, I don't teach materialism, nor coming or going, right? Because that's a born death thing. I don't teach that. That is samsara. That is not what I'm teaching. That's the problem. But I teach, Mahamati, that which is not coming and going. Right? Not past, future. I'm talking about being awake and experiencing this entire process moment to moment. Be alive. Be in this process. Stop reading the ashes and start living your life proper. Instead of constantly qualifying what is you in this life, be the life. What a mind-shattering thought. Now, Mahamati, coming means production. Coming in means production and mass. Gosh, these words. It's exactly what I'm always talking about. The formations of energy, right? E equals MC squared. This ain't new, folks. Energy equates to mass because energy in its formations begets mass. Higgs boson, the Higgs field. How deep into science and quantum do you want to go? You don't have to be a physicist to understand this. It becomes clear through your own witnessing of the actual process of the universe, of all phenomena. If you can just separate your identity from material. Coming means production and mass. It is born of accumulation. My word, amalgamations, right? Amalgams. If you watch this channel for any amount of time, you've heard this dialogue repeatedly. And here it is from Shakyamuni's own mouth, right? Well, translated through Suzuki, but certainly lots of evidence for this. Going, Mahamati, means destruction. That which is not by me, that which is not coming and going is designated unborn. But see, that's that dichotomy that is materialistic as well. It says that if that exists, then it is. And if I destroy it and it no longer exists, then there is never that energy ever to be seen again. But that's a false premise. It denies that this is an ongoing We're moving through time space at a rate you can't even measure. And think about it. You think you're sitting in front of your computer right now, or you're on a treadmill listening to this podcast. But you don't understand. The earth is spinning. You're moving at thousands of miles an hour. Oh, the earth is spinning and it's in orbit around the sun going, 30,000 miles a second or some, or I'm getting tongue-tied, sorry. But certainly you know the earth is hauling butt around the sun. Oh, and by the way, the sun and all the planets, as we're hurtling around each other, is also moving at an incredible speed around the galaxy. This incredibly huge Milky Way. Oh, and by the way, that galaxy also flying through time-space at speeds we're now talking about parsecs. I mean, who knows what that is? You think you're standing still? You think you're on a treadmill? You think life is like that? Nothing is static. Everything is exploding like sparks. If you start to perceive life that way, what are you attached to? What is your identity built upon? How silly, how small. That you're able to witness this process in these minute little actions, temporary instantiations of stuff, stuffness, suchness. Wow, that's a different world. That's a different life. Mahamadi, I do not teach anything approaching the discrimination of the philosophers. Right? I'm not taking account of life. I'm not a bean counter. I'm not trying to impress you with all the stuff. I'm trying to get you to observe that stuff as sparks. Just let it just exist in that moment. Be in it, be with it, experience it, but don't try to hang on to a spark. How silly is that? For what reason? Because there are no external objects. Not really. They're just happening. There's nothing to get attached to. When one abides in mind only, beyond which there is no external world, dualism ceases. Okay, the words are a mess here, but you understand what he's pointing to? As there is no realm of form based on discrimination, one comes to recognize that there is nothing but what is seen of the mind itself, experienced through mind. Not of the mind as though it is a magical puff of smoke that makes a guitar. The of the mind part is the attachment to a thing called guitar. Just look at the guitar and understand that's just a moment-to-moment manifestation of guitarness. What is there to hang on to and possess and create a me with guitar? Everything's just this process of suchnesses, as well as you and I, and the suchness of mind. Be in the suchness of mind, understanding that everything is suchness rather than somehow grasped permanent static. That's a silly point of view. That's a small local point of view. That's why you stress and have anxiety about it. If you want to stop stressing and having anxiety, get a larger worldview. See things as they are, not as you want to maintain them. As there is no realm of form based on discrimination, one comes to recognize that there is nothing but what we see of mind itself. And for these reasons, the discrimination of what is seen of the mind itself does not take place. In samsara, that's all the mind does, is make things permanent. In Buddhaness, we remove that component. Things are forming, but not formed. They're not static. They're not permanent. We experience them through their arc of life, just as our arc of life. Owing to the cessation of discrimination, not the cessation of the discriminated, the cessation of our process of identification, one enters into the triple emancipation, where is the state of no form, emptiness, and effortlessness. Hence it is called deliverance, liberation, unattachment. But that doesn't mean you leave, that you go extinct, but that we cease grasping, clinging desperately to me. There's no need for that. That's what causes us to suffer. I remember, Mahamati, when I was staying in a certain place, a Brahmin Lokayatika approached where I was, and having approached, suddenly asked me, saying, Gautama, is all created? This is that creation word, right? If everything is created, where did it come from? Who created it? You and I are creating creation all the time. I said to him, Brahman, if all is created, this is the first school of materialism. Right? Created assumes permanence, a static thing, no suchness. That is created. That is a thing. You see how words are slippery here? Being a witness of suchness doesn't deny that something exists, but it recognizes that that existence is moving through time and space, is ephemeral. It's a perceptive identity. And rather than identifying that identity, seeing it, understanding it as suchness, as in process, as being, as a verb instead of a noun, we have a different relation to everything. Our relationship isn't bound by the past, by hanging on to something that's no longer there because it's different. It's new. It's right now. Does that make sense? I know it's slippery, but it's all a perception of mind, isn't it? It's an experience that changes how we live this life. This is why we talk about dragging the past along, baggage, karmic baggage, insisting on maintaining something that gone, not there. No wonder we suffer, right? Thus, to state that all is non-eternal, or that all is eternal, or that all is born, or that all is unborn, this Brahman is the sixth school of materialism. Again, Mahamati, the Brahmin Lokayatika, said this to me: Gautama, is all one? Is all different? Is all characterized with bothness? Is all characterized with not bothness? Is all to be regarded as subject to causation, since all is seen as born of varieties of causes? This Brahman is the 10th school of materialism. Just constantly dissecting and discriminating, yes? Again, Gautama, is all explainable? Is all unexplainable? Is there any ego soul? And I love the way he hyphenated this, because to believe in a soul is to really staunchly believe in an ego, a self, a permanent self. Is there an ego soul? Is this world real? Is this world not real? Is there another world? Is there no world, no other world? Is there another existent or non-existent world? Is there emancipation? Is there no emancipation? Is all momentary? Is all not momentary? Are space, apratasimkaya, nirodha, and nirvana, O Gautama, are they created or uncreated? Is there the middle existence? Is there no middle existence? Boy, this Brahmin, obviously this is Shakyamuni, talking about questions that have been foisted on him as challenges. I then said to him, Mahamati, if so, Brahman, this is materialism. You are in the very process of identifying these concepts as things. You are trapped, Mr. Brahman. You aren't getting the lesson. Sort of as Mahamati is not getting it. It is not mine. I am not teaching or talking or speaking or discoursing on that. You can have that mess. O Brahman, it is your worldly philosophy. I explain, Brahman, that the triple world has its cause in the habit energy of discrimination going on since beginningless time on account of error and wrong reasoning. For discrimination takes place. Brahman, because it is not recognized that there is no external world but the mind itself, and not because an external world is seen as the objects of cognition, identifying self with other, according to the philosophers, there is a triple concordance of an ego soul, sense organs, and an objective world, but such is not mine. Brahman, I do not belong to the school of causation, nor to the school of no causation, except that I teach the chain of origination, nidana, as far as the thought-constructed world of grasped and grasping exists depending upon discrimination. You remember my recent video on the mind is nidana? And the nidana describes not only the process of all materialism, the universe, but the very process of thought, the mind itself. And in that realization, you realize there is no difference. This is a big thought. This takes time to digest. That's why I tried to put in my own modern words this concept in a PDF that's on the threefoldlotus.com site, yeah? Called Nidana in Mind. You can download that document anytime. It's free. Right? threefoldlotus.com/home/home.htm. All sorts of little nuggets like that on that page. What is karma? How does chanting work? Nidana in Mind. Here, Shakyamuni is describing exactly this. This is not understood by you and others who cherish the notion of an ego soul, this identification, and its continuity, as though by identifying it, you make it permanent beyond your own life. It's like so juvenile. It's like Santa Claus. Why do you do this to yourself? Raising false, incredible hopes and crashing in terrible, crushing fears and sadness. You set yourself up. Stop it. Mahamadi, space, nirvana, and causation exist in enumeration. As realities, they are unattainable. They're not real. They're fantasies created, socio-cultural habit energy to make something seem real, permanent, which isn't. Suchness, manifestation of potential constantly happening. It's not that it doesn't exist, it's that it's a moving target. Everything's in momentum. Everything is establishing a moment of suchness, just as you and I are. What a liberating sensation that is. Shift your mind. Hence, the question whether there are created or not requires no answering. You've created a question of nothing. It's meaningless. Again, Mahamadi, the Brahmin Lokayatika, said this: is the triple world to be regarded as caused by ignorance, desire, and action, or is it causeless? Brahman, this twofold question again belongs to materialism. Gautama, are all things to be conceived under the aspect of individuality and generality? This too, Brahman, belongs to materialism. So long as there is a mental perturbation which makes one cling to the objective world of discrimination, there is materialism. Because you're creating matter where there is energy. Energy, by its very nature, is unstable. It's constantly changing. It's constantly at work. That's the experience of this universe, the basis of all things perceived. Further, Mahamadi, this Brahmin materialist said this to me. Where are we time-wise? Oh, we're doing good. Gautama, is there any philosophy that is not of the world? All the truth that is taught by all the philosophers, by means of varieties of words and phrases, by means of reasons, examples, and conclusions, by general consent, Gautama, belongs to me. Brahman, there is something that does not belong to you. Thought, though it is not beyond the truth of general consent, nor independent of varieties of words and phrases, and further, it is not out of accord with reason. The Brahman asked, Is there any philosophy that is not of the world and yet belongs to the general opinion of the world? Brahman, there is that which does not belong to materialism and which is not reached by your wisdom nor by that of the philosophers who cling to false discriminations and wrong reasonings, as they fail to see the unreality of external objects. By this is meant the cessation of discrimination. Stop identifying. When it is recognized that there is nothing beyond what is seen of the mind itself, the discrimination of being and non-being ceases. You simply stop thinking that way, experiencing life that way. You experience it like surfing a wave. When you're surfing a wave, you're not concerned about the rest of the ocean. As thus there is no external world as the object of perception, discrimination abides in its own abode. The attachment disappears. The ocean's still there. There's no magic here. But your attachment to it, it evaporates because your sole concern is surfing the wave, being with the momentum. This is not of materialism. It belongs to me. It does not belong to you. The teaching, obviously, the insight, the Buddha-ness. By abiding in its own abode is meant that it ceases to evolve. As discrimination is no more born, it is said to have ceased to evolve. Evolve as an attachment, as a relation. This Brahman is not of materialism. In short, Brahman, if there is any coming and going of the Vijnanas, a vanishing and appearing, a solicitation, an attachment, an intense affection, a philosophical view, a theory, an abode, a touch, the clinging to various signs, assemblage, continuity, desire, and attachment to a cause, this, Brahman, is materialism of yours, not mine. In other words, the philosophers are admired completely in the human mind's relation to things, even events. Everything they speak of is nouns. They fail to identify the ongoing process, which by its very nature is unattached. It's happening. They don't want to deal with that. They're mired in samsara, yes? No matter how witty. Mahamati, I was thus questioned by a Brahmin materialist who came to me, and when he was thus sent off, he silently departed. At that time, there came to the king of the Nagas, called Krishnapashaka, who assumed the body of a Brahmin and said thus, Gautama, is there not another world? Now, young man, whence do you come? Gautama, I am come from White Isle. Brahmin, that is another world. The young man thus refuted and put to silence, made himself invisible without asking me anything about my own teaching, which stands in opposition to his. He thought within himself, this son of the Shakyas stands outside of my own system. He is a pitiable fellow. He belongs to the school which holds the cessation of signs and causes. He talks of the cessation of discrimination, which will take place when there is the cognition of an external world as something seen of of one's own discrimination. And Mahamati, you too ask me how, For one who serves the Lokayatika, skilled in various incantations and in the art of eloquence, there are worldly enjoyments and not the attainment of the Dharma. That's a hard slam on Mahamadi. You're doing the same thing as these stubborn Brahmins who maintain that my teaching, Buddha-ness, is something that I've just discriminated as yet another specialness amongst all the discrimination. They're so doggedly determined to make everything material. One side of the equation, not E, equals MC squared. That's where we live. Forget that other side of the equation. And Mahamadi says, what do you mean by the words, the objects of worldly enjoyment and the Dharma? What is that? What's the difference? What do those words really mean? Really? You're just now asking this? Shakyamuni says, well said. Well said, Mahamadi. Maybe you're getting a clue here. You have thought deeply about this twofold meaning. Having in view present and future generations, then, Mahamadi, listen well and reflect within yourself, I will tell you. Again, certainly, I'm listening. Okay. What is meant by a worldly object of enjoyment, Mahamadi? It means that which it can be touched, attracted by, wiped off, handled, and tasted. It is that which makes one get attached to an external world, enter into a dualism on account of wrong view, and appearing again in the skandhas, where, owing to the procreative force of desire, oh my God, he's saying it all here, there arises all kinds of disaster, such as birth, age, disease, death, sorrow, lamentation, pain, despair, etc. That's the whole of Buddhism right there. This is called the object of worldly enjoyment by myself and other Buddhas. This, Mahamadi, is the attainment of worldly enjoyments and not that of the truth. It is materialism which one learns by serving the Lokayatika. Man, please reread that paragraph several times. I have been talking about this for years. The process that creates a human being is an endless amalgam of energies in formation, creating forms, right? Like an atom, an electron, a proton, a quark, the Higgs field. It's all a manifestation of energies. I know it's hard to imagine because we see and experience the material world, but ask yourself how you see and imagine and experience the physical world. Is it not through your eye consciousness, your ear consciousness, your smell consciousness, your sense, your feeling, your touch consciousness, and so forth? The stored memory of having touched, having seen, having heard. This is how we construct our identity. And Shakyamuni says, that's all well and good, but your relationship to all of that stuff is what stresses you out. Because now that you've identified all this stuff, you're afraid of losing it. And so you make up all sorts of devices on yourself to maintain, get more, avoid loss, compete. All of that is samsara. Yeah, it's ongoing. But if you shift your mind to perceiving that all of it, remember that all of it, since before the universe, before proton, before quark, before atom, before electron, there was the energy and the fascination, the desire, quote unquote, the wonder of experiencing manifestations of itself. That's the primary issue of attachment. It's a wonderful mechanism because it ended up making this apparatus of life that emerged a facility of mind, that we could actually witness it happening. But now that you have that mind, you can unanchor your experience of life to stuff. You still have it. You're still here. But rather than stressing and being anxiety-ridden about it, you can see it as just, it's a moment to moment, and you get to experience it unattached, freely, be in it, be admired in it, but don't be admired in an entangled way. Be a watcher, an observer, an appreciator. Be amazed. Stop trying to make it permanent. Just go with it. Be with it, with one another in the same way. In this way, this life becomes glorious and amazing, an experience of all, rather than a localized maintaining of, these are mine, these are yours. That's ridiculous. All of it is happening all of the time. Change your mind. This Mahamadi is the attainment of worldly enjoyments and not that of the truth. The truth is that everything is constantly happening, and you can't hold on to anything because that's already gone. It is materialism which one learns by serving the Lokayatika. Yeah? Mahamadi, what is meant by the attainment of the Dharma? When the truth of self-mind and the twofold egolessness are understood, and further, when the nature of egolessness of things and persons is seen into, discrimination ceases to assert itself. When the various stages of bodhisattvahood are thoroughly perceived one after another, the Sita, the Manas, and the Manovijnana are turned away. And when one enters upon the path of initiation by the wisdom of all the Buddhas and takes hold of the 10 inexhaustible vows, one becomes sovereign master of all things by virtue of a life of effortlessness. Because if you're not constantly grabbing and trying to make permanent the world around you, then what effort is left? If you're not doing that, then you're just in wonder, in being, in savoring every moment of instantiation. You become one with the energy instead of one of the products. Effortlessness. Hence it is called the Dharma, as one is thereby released from all philosophical views, unsound reasonings, discriminations, and dualistic notions. As a rule, Mahamadi, the philosophical views lead the ignorant, though not the wise, to a dualism that is, to nihilism and eternalism. That's the false choice they set up. Eternalism rises from embracing a doctrine of no causation, while nihilism rises from the believing in the annihilation of causal conditions and in the non-existence of a cause. I teach, however, the Dharma, so-called, which is subject to the conditions of rising, abiding, and destruction. Everything manifesting momentarily, suchnesses. This, Mahamadi, is the conclusion with regard to worldly enjoyment and the Dharma. So it is said, beings are subdued by the reception and are brought into subjection by the moral precepts. They are removed from philosophical views by transcendental knowledge and are nourished by the emancipation. All that is taught by the philosophers to no purpose is materialism. Where the realistic view of cause and effect is cherished, there is no self-realization. I teach to my group of disciples one self-realization which has nothing to do with cause and effect, being free from materialism. Now, a lot of you will have heard this for the first time, because a lot of groups calling themselves Nietzschean groups maintain that everything is cause and effect, without telling you that everything that is cause and effect is the view of the philosophers, not the view of Shakyamuni. That what Shakyamuni teaches is outside of that. Yeah. There is nothing but that which is seen of the mind itself. The duality, too, is of the mind. While existence is observed as divided, the grasped and the grasping, it has nothing to do with the eternalism or nihilism. As long as mentation goes on, as long as the mind is functioning, there is materialism. That's the condition of samsara, the mind perceiving the owner, the experience, the experiencer, the duality. When there is no rising of discrimination, the world is seen of the mind itself. When you can decide to take the mind's natural tendency to attach, to be a witness without being an accruer, an accumulator, without the warehouse, then that witness becomes freed as a function of mind itself. Go on, son. Coming means the originating of the objective worlds as an effect, and going is the not seeing of the effect. When one thoroughly understands the coming and going, discrimination ceases. Eternity and non-eternity, the made, the not made, this world and that world, all these and other ideas belong to materialism. It's not what we practice. So I think, yeah, that's long enough for today. We're going to continue and now get into the nirvanas. That will be our next video. This was pretty technical. And the Lankavatara is very much that kind of a teaching. Mahamadi represents all of the students of Buddhism who desperately want to turn Buddhism into materialism, a religion, a qualifying of philosophy, of a brilliant understanding by the ego of how the mind works. But although this is the discourse of early Buddhism to try to get people to come to an understanding of how samsara is functioned by the mind, that is not the teaching of Shakyamuni, that is what leads to a divorce from that, identifying it well in order to then understand how powerful and how meaningful it is to release that and then become experience itself rather than qualification materialism. Yeah? Be the energy part of the equation rather than the MC squared part of the equation. I know I'm playing fast and loose with, Einstein and so forth, but truthfully, the insights that come of that math, of science, are the focus of Shakyamuni's teaching, not the brilliance of the materialism. It's wonderful to know the depth of that attachment so that there's just deeper, more appreciation for not that. But the teaching isn't about that or not that. It's about standing outside of it, watching the whole of it as the process, right? Arising, abiding, destruction. And it annihilates itself because it's a momentary manifestation. It's like seeing ripples. You throw a pebble into a pond and there's ripples in the water, and you don't expect those ripples to be there the next day that you can go pick them up as though they were real, but that's what we do in life. With our mind of Buddha-ness, we watch with fascination as the ripple comes into being, ripples out, and goes away. That's the process of everything. Why is it so hard to get that part of our minds to maintain, to be, instead of being sucked in to every single ripple as though our identity itself depends upon it? That's what we do in samsara. Okay. Thank you. If you've stayed with the video this far, I hope that you got some major insights from this, because this was core stuff. And thank you. I appreciate your dedication, your commitment, your practice. It's amazing. Isn't it, though? Namo Myoho Renge Kyo. Thank you. Like, subscribe. Let's get this more popular, more propagation, more people to start thinking about these ideas. Yeah. And those of you who are able to support this channel with your donations, Namo Myoho Renge Kyo. Thank you so much, patrons. Take care of yourselves. Take care of your health. Keep your practice strong. Depend upon it. Look for it to solve your mentations. Yes? All right. Enough for today. I'll see you in the next one. As always, bye for now.